Here. There we go. Okay, so now the recording has started. I want to welcome you. I'm Dr. Tiffany, and this is the Fix My Gut Top 3 Tips webinar. It will go by very quickly, so please keep your questions for the end. And what I'll do is I'll take those questions and be able to address those. Hopefully, I'll be able to tackle them as we're going. And then I do have some questions that were sent in advance, and I have my water here, so I'm good to go. So, we're talking about my top 3 tips, okay? And there are 10 tips overall when it comes to fixing your gut. So that's what we're going to get into today. So if you registered for this and you're here participating, I'm assuming that you are dealing with some digestive issues yourself. You're probably either dealing with chronic constipation or chronic urgency. You're having diarrhea. There's gas and bloating. There are things along that lines and those lines rather, and you're tired of struggling. All right, and so the Fix My Gut program and the upcoming actual 6-week coaching program is about that. It's about getting to the root cause explanation of what's going on for you, and then giving you interventions to turn that around. And in this webinar, we're just going over my top 3 tips, but there are 10 different aspects of what needs to be addressed or looked at or assessed to get your gut healthy. Okay, so without further ado, I will get going. So, and again, if you're here and have a question, just save that for me to the end. And if you can just drop it in the chat at the end, I'll answer it. And if we have time for Q&A, that'll be amazing. If I don't get around to Q&A today, if we run out of time, you can always send a question to the staff if I didn't adequately address that. So, who am I? I'm a solo integrative practitioner in the Lake Norman area. That's where my practice and my home are near. And my credentials: I'm a licensed mental health counselor, licensed clinical mental health counselor, naturopathic doctor. I practice functional medicine. I'm a brain health professional. And I take all these things and I blend them together. And the things that I recommend fall into this kind of 3-legged stool approach here of healing. So we've got neurological, physiological, and psychological. And so then people will come to me because, if when you have chronic diarrhea, a lot of times you're also dealing with anxiety or mood disturbances. If you have chronic constipation, that's a slower system. You may have lethargy, so energy problems, depression. So what goes on in the body goes on in the brain, goes on in the mind, right? So there's no separateness to all of this. These things are all very much connected. So when I look at my healing approach, it's mental, it's physical, it's brain based, right? So I am gratefully, proudly trained through just some amazing people: Dr. Amen of the Amen Clinics, Dr. Krazian's Institute, who wrote the book "Why Isn't My Brain Working," and Dr. Malillo. I'm Malillo trained under the brain aspect of things, of how to get people's brains working again. So my specialties are eating disorders, ADHD, chronic illness, and just kind of personal issues of my own have driven me here as well. So personal health issues around autoimmunity and wanting my brain to be as good as it possibly could be. So that's kind of how I got into this particular space, and have loved being here and love the kind of people I get to work with. I also Oh, and I have always had my own digestive issues. I think I said that, and use the 3-leg stool to apply to myself. So I really believe in also addressing the nervous system in the healing process. So I practice something called QNRT, which is a nervous system rebalancing approach, and I do that with a lot of my eating disorder, chronic illness, digestive health clients. I recommend it in the Fix My Gut program, the coaching program. I'm a believer in emotional freedom technique, which is tapping. And then I'm also an SSP which is a safe and sound protocol, which I have people who've dealt with trauma or who have had auditory processing or processing issues. I have them go through that process with me. Okay, so that's who I am. That's what I do. That's my website, docbrownbush.com. And let's keep going. And hopefully, I am. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Hold on, let me go back. There we go. Okay. And okay, that's what I wanted. All right. So fix my gut expectations. So what should you expect of this webinar? Okay. So digestion is a process. It's important that we go from north to south. So when I do my Fix My Gut 6-week coaching program, when I do Fix My Gut one-on-one with people, and as I talk to you today in this webinar, I want you to think about things from north to south. Okay. From the moment you are thinking about food, the moment you put the food in your mouth, the moment mastication and chewing occurs, enzymes from saliva, all of this is from north to south, down your esophagus, down into your stomach, down into the small intestines and large intestines. You're going to have engagement with pancreas and gallbladder. All these things are part of what you're looking at when you're talking about fixing your gut. And a lot of times when you're using things like laxatives, it's only one part of the process, the motility and hydration process, right? There's other things that are throwing your gut off that you may not have addressed before. So we're going to talk about the areas of concern that need to be identified. And then again, 10-step process, but only 3 steps for this webinar. Okay. All right, moving along. So I want you to take a moment, and you don't need to share with me, but take a moment to think about what your typical stool looks like. What does your typical stool look like? And what does a normal stool look like, right? This is what a normal stool looks like. And so people will come to me and they'll say that they've got these little blobs or they've got these balls, right? So they've got these little blobs or balls a lot. I'll get thin strings people tell me about. They've just got all kinds of different things going on here. And what is normal is a sausage shape, a soft sausage or a snake, something that looks like this. So a lot of times you're either fully constipated or mildly constipated unbeknownst to you. And there's so many reasons that this occurs. Okay. So we want to think about where you are as you are at the outset of this Fix My Gut program, and then you want to be able to compare that to where you end up at the end. So step one in my 10 steps, and for today, my 3 steps is water and fiber. Water and fiber, super important. So make a note of water and fiber as I drink my water. You need half your body weight in ounces of water. So if you weigh 140 pounds, you need 70 ounces of water. That is before you drink any coffee, you have any alcohol, you work out. So like I have coffee in the morning and in midday. Well, not coffee, matcha morning and midday. So that's caffeine. And then I work out and I do the sauna. So it's a lot of sweating. So then, I would take my weight, divide that in ounces, and then I would need to add another 40 to 60 ounces on top of that to account for all the things that take water away. So what I want you guys to be thinking about is, let's say you're supposed to have that 70 ounces of water a day, but you're dehydrated and your stool looks like it, and you are doing all this sweating and all of that during the summer here. Of part of what's happening for you may just be not getting enough water and losing too much water, and that's affecting your stool, right? Hydration is necessary for the bulking of stool and to assess in peristalsis. So the process of moving, sometimes you can feel it. You can feel your gut actually moving and the digestive process happening, and that is impacted by hydration and fiber. So that's that wave like movement of the intestines. Things that can affect it: People who have had concussions, traumatic brain injuries, one hit their head, had something happen inside of their brain. So maybe they didn't concuss themselves, but they've had something happen like a stroke or something like that, can now turn around and have constipation issues. I've worked with a couple of people who've had strokes. I work with a lot of concussed clients. Um, and I work with people with cognitive decline as well. And oftentimes there will be a constipation feature to what's going on. So keep that in mind that it could be water, fiber, brain, right? Because all that will play into each other. Trauma. Trauma histories will also create some of this constipation as well. There's been such an extreme stress level earlier on in life, um, that it changes how the nervous system actually works. And so the gut may not work as effectively because of the high cortisol levels that occurred earlier, or there's just too much of a stress response in the system, and the body never forgets. So that is why trauma plays into this as well. So one of the things I talked to you about just a second ago is that I help people move trauma through their system. I do QNRT, I do tapping, I do safe and sound protocol. This will help with digestion. And so later in the Fix My Gut program, if you have a history that was traumatic, if you had a traumatic childhood or birth, we're going to have you incorporate techniques to deal with trauma as well. So, on step one, I'm talking water and fiber, half your body weight in ounces of water, but also know that there's these other things that could play into it. And a car accident, a trauma history need to be taken into consideration as well. Okay. Fiber. So, how much fiber? 35 to 50 grams daily. You want to work up to it, right? So, I will recommend people get their fiber from veggies, fruits, right? They're going to get their fiber from root vegetables. They're going to have a high fiber quinoa carbohydrate source. You get your fiber from veggies and fruits, but you also get it from the carbohydrates being high in fiber as well. Now, if you have a diet like I do, where I eat a lot of vegetables but very low in fruit and root vegetables because I'm pescatarian keto, what you would do is add fibers in. So I add fiber called PGX, and I'll take a couple of scoops of that throughout the day to get my fiber up. I also recommend to people that they use psyllium seed husks, whether it's whole or powder form. That helps as well. And why do you, oh, and miracle noodles, that's another source of fiber. It's a really good source of fiber. I personally don't eat enough miracle noodles, but it's another type of fiber that's shirataki noodles, is what they are called. And it has this other fiber where the noodle looks for the most part like a spaghetti or angel hair pasta, that kind of thing, but it's just all fiber and it has no carbohydrate impact. And so all of these things, what do you need to do this for? All of these things bulk up your stool. So as water is coming in, you have volume to your stool and you can form that type of stool that we were talking about. So let me go back here. So the fiber helps to provide with this volume, right? Because here you see where they're blobs and there's no shape. And so you don't have any fiber here for bulking, but you do have a lot of water. And here you don't have a lot of water, but maybe you might have some fiber for size, but you're not getting movement. So you also probably don't have fiber here as well. Okay. If there are questions about that, please post. Okay. All right. And so step two. So we are starting north to south. And I said, we're looking at, what you're taking in. So you're taking in water, you're taking in fiber, it's what you eat, but we're actually literally in the mouth. Okay. So saliva and stomach function are super important because we're talking about what happens in the mouth and then what happens in the gut as well. Okay. And in the stomach, because that's what's next. It's mouth to stomach. So, what does saliva do? Saliva lubricates food. Saliva also has digestive enzymes in it to help break down the food. So, you need to relax to be able to digest. You need to be able to relax. You need to get into parasympathetic. You have to be out of fight, flight, freeze to be able to produce saliva. Saliva will not it will not show up. You will not have that lubrication in your mouth if you're in fight, flight, freeze, if you're stressed out. Certain illnesses, certain autoimmune disorders also have a problem with saliva. So if you have MS, RA, lupus, some thyroid, issues are autoimmune, sometimes Sjogren's, you don't have as much saliva, and that can cause digestive issues just because you don't have the enzymes that you're supposed to have to coat the food. So, if you have a problem with that, use lemons and vinegar to stimulate saliva production. Okay. And that will help you begin the digestive process. And then you've got to masticate. You have to chew 25 to 30 times. So, not only do you have the saliva, you've also chewed and broken that food down. Many times people eat very fast. It should take you about 20-25 minutes to get through a meal. I find that they're having digestive problems because they're eating too quickly or they're eating on the go. They're not being mindful and present when they're eating. So you have to relax to digest. You have to relax to digest. Okay. So, really thinking about in step two that you need to have saliva production for things to work. So now you've got the saliva going, you've chewed the food, but now we need to go to the stomach. Okay. Now, in the stomach, it should have the pH level of battery acid. So that's what we're saying here. The way the stomach works is it's HCl, which is the pH of battery acid, and it's mechanical. So you should have enough acid in your stomach to break the food down. If you don't have enough acid in your stomach, it's going to feel like you have a brick in your stomach. And a lot of times I find that my vegetarians and my vegans are people who were turned off by animal protein, and it's because they don't have HCl. The body will do this as a coping mechanism. So if you feel like when you eat, you feel really heavy and you feel like you have a brick in your stomach, you are not creating enough HCl. You're not creating enough HCl. Okay. And that can be because you have an infection. That could be that you just don't do hydrochloric acid very well in the stomach. But that's one place where you've already got the food from the mouth to the stomach and it's not breaking down. So worst case scenario, you're eating too fast, you don't chew your food. Then it goes to your stomach and there's no hydrochloric acid. Okay. The second part of the stomach working is mechanical. And so there's that movement again, but it's really important to have the hydrochloric acid. So a lot of times what I'll find is that there's an H. pylori infection that's super common, and that's why people aren't digesting their food. Because H. pylori turns off hydrochloric acid in the digestive tract and makes it so that you don't digest well. So we don't like that. So we got to get rid of H. pylori. So the other thing that I want to remind you of is you need to relax to digest, and the stomach won't produce hydrochloric acid if you're in fight, flight, freeze. You need to rest to digest. If you have a concussion history, that can also throw this whole process off. So, what can you do? What do you do if you're like, absolutely, doc? I feel like when I eat animal protein, it sits like a brick in my gut, and I have not been wanting to eat animal protein for a while now. What do I do about that? Okay, so you can use apple cider vinegar with the mother. So it has to have that like fermented kind of ring that floats around, stringiness in it. That's with the mother. And your max amount of apple cider vinegar is when it starts to burn your throat. That's how you know you've got too much. So I recommend throughout the day using 1 to 3 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. You mix it in with your water, you use a straw, or you just kind of throw it into the back of your throat. So that's one way to work on digestion. Now you can use betaine HCl, which is a hydrochloric acid that you can take in a pill form. I tend to wait until I have the lab for that, but that is something that you could do. You have to be careful because all these things can cause a lot of acid and burning in the throat. The other thing that I recommend are Swedish bitters, and you use Swedish bitters in your mouth before you eat, and it increases the likelihood of juices, hydrochloric acid being released for digestion. Also gets bile flowing. Bile is from the gallbladder. And so if you use Swedish bitters, that will help you. Just get the digestion going. Okay. So what I'm recommending here is you need to calm down. You need to chew slowly. You need to chew 25 times. Then you're hoping that when things get to your gut, you have enough hydrochloric acid. If you do not, then we need to add apple cider vinegar, maybe even betaine HCl, and then the bitters. Okay. And then the bitters. So I do bitters last. That's why it's listed last because a lot of my clients don't like the bitters and they forget to use them. Hold on just a second. I'm going to turn on my fan because it's making my throat tickly. A moment. Okay. I should be in business now. Okay. So that is step two. That is our step two. And again, if there are any questions, please share them. All right. So now we're skipping step three. We're jumping to step four. These are the top three tips that I think you need to take away and think about. So we said water and fiber, stomach digestion, and then we said hydrochloric acid in the stomach. And now we're saying step four is to remove food sensitivities. If you have followed me at all over my career here since I got into functional medicine and maybe 2011, I have been telling people to remove allergen foods for a while. So I like to remove foods. And I for a long time ran a program where it was an elimination diet and people would feel so much better. They would lose weight. It would be 30 to 45 days. And I believe wholeheartedly in understanding that food is medicine, but it can also be poison. So we want to identify food sensitivities. A way to tell that that's the case is if you have a stuffy or drippy nose after you eat. Either one, okay, tells you that you're having some sort of reaction. If you have eczema and psoriasis or eczema or psoriasis, eczema is oftentimes tracked back to dairy. Psoriasis is usually dairy products, gluten, and fungal infections. That's psoriasis. Eczema, I was thinking about eczema oftentimes is dairy and and eggs. Eggs show up a lot with eczema. So the other way for you to tell is if you have digestive bloating after you eat. If you have headaches, ear ringing, that tells you you've got a food sensitivity, sleep issues, mood issues, anxiety, and low energy. So if you feel like on a daily basis you are dealing with these issues, you've got to really look at your diet. And no one likes to hear me say this, especially my parents when their kids have allergies and all these issues, but a lot of times it's the fact that they need to remove the top 3 foods, dairy, gluten, and eggs for 3 weeks and just see if they notice a difference. The things that you crave or your kids crave are very revealing about what's actually going on. Food cravings tell you the food you're probably having a problem with. And so if your kid doesn't want to give up pizza, doesn't want to give up mac and cheese, doesn't want to give up a lot of those foods that are really cheesy and bready, then that tells you that they're probably having a hard time with gluten and dairy. If you don't want to give up certain foods, that tells you that that's probably your food sensitivity. And the quickest way for you to tell if this actually made a difference for you is to look at the scale. Okay, did the scale drop? If you add the food in, does the scale go up? That tells you there are certain foods that I'm not supposedly reactive to, but when I add those foods in, I can see a difference on the scale. My tongue changes its color. Your tongue changes over every 3 days. So my tongue will get like a different kind of coating on it. But also my stools and my bloating changes, right? So I become a bit gassier and my stool looks different to me. So foods like certain like nuts and things like that that I'm not supposed to be reactive to actually cause problems for me because these other foods I've taken out. So you have to pay attention to yourself. Okay. So that's how you know if it's you. Then this is how you remove the foods, the biggest ones, and then this is how you know what happened, like if it made a difference or not. Okay. Your tongue coating is supposed to be pink and wet. So your tongue should be pink and wet, not white, not cracked, not different colors that shouldn't have scalloping on the side. That all reveals what's going on with your health. Okay. And so every 3 days, your tongue will change over and will give you a better idea of what's going on with your health. Okay. So I do a lot of tongue analysis with people. One of the questions that came in is which foods are tested. Adding some gum here because my throat's so scratchy. Too much talking, too much talking. Okay, so I don't think I can maximize this. Can I get it to be a little bit bigger? I can. Okay, so these are the foods that are tested. We have dairy, we have beans, we have gluten, um, we have fruits, we have meats, and there are more. There are 100 foods tested, nuts and seeds. So there are a few more. Plus, this test also looks at fungus and it looks at, so it's candida fungus and it looks at yeast. Okay, so sometimes people are very reactive to yeast, risen breads, beer, things like that. But a lot of times I pick up candida overgrowths and infections as well here. So make a note of the food. I want to give you a second that you can make a note of the foods you think that you probably are having an issue with. If you look at eggs, dairy, and gluten, and you look at your symptoms, so the food cravings that you have, it sounds like my dog has gone off in the back, so let's ignore that. But if you look at the scale, your tongue, the drippy nose, the eczema, psoriasis, the bloating, the headaches, and you think about the foods that you are eating, try to pinpoint or tie back in when I have this, I have this symptom. When I have this, I have this symptom. Okay. Um, and just make a note of that because you might feel like you have a hard time with beans, even though beans are not my top three. Okay. Just like I said, I have a hard time with nuts, and it's probably because I had a lot of nuts at different times in my life and just kind of abused it and developed a sensitivity to those items as well. So during the Fix My Gut program, we are testing not only your stool with the GI map, we're also testing your food sensitivities as well. And so why are we doing this? Well, when you have leaky gut, foods are getting out into the bloodstream and causing reactivity, causing all kinds of health problems, brain issues, all kinds of things. But also, and leaky gut comes from a gut permeability that I will know if you have that from your GI map. It doesn't make sense to do one without the other. So if we do a food sensitivity test, which people ask me for, I don't know why you're sensitive to these foods. Or I don't know if you're sensitive to these foods and you have an infection as well. Or I don't know what your good bacteria looks like or your bad bacteria. So we do both in the Fix My Gut program. So we're taking away something that's inflammatory and we're resolving the gut at the same time. So 6 through 10, the steps, test, don't guess. Okay. We look at the prebiotics for the large intestines. It's a whole thing I won't get into. We test for infections and leaky gut. We test for immune system levels and inflammation in the digestive tract. We address the vagus nerve, the brain to gut connection and communication. It has that been impacted by head injuries. This is a very comprehensive program, and it's mimicking what I would normally do with someone one on one. When I'm working with people in their gut, I am talking to them about all of these things. Stress management the nervous system, we're looking at fight, flight, freeze instead of rest and digest if that's what you're dealing with. Because if you're not in rest and digest and you're in fight, flight, freeze, what you realized earlier here in this session is that there are a lot of things that get impacted and you don't digest as well. So that is the Fix My Gut program. So at this point, I am at half an hour, which is brilliant. I got where I was supposed to be, and I just have a few more slides left. This was the top three. These were my top three. Okay. So you have learned about water and fiber. You know how much you're supposed to take in. You've learned that if you feel like you have a brick in your gut, that is probably hydrochloric acid. And you learned that you need to stimulate saliva with lemon and vinegar. And then we also learned about food sensitivities. If you just did those things, I think you would see an improvement if you paid attention to them. What I do in the Fix My Gut actual program is much more robust, and it looks at all these different things. And what it does is it gets deeper into that root cause of what's happening instead of it just being kind of a superficial band aid. So, 30 days from now, you should see a difference with the changes that I just gave you. Go back to the notes from today. The recording will be available to those of you who are here registered or even didn't make it to the webinar. Go back to the audio, to the video here. Go back to your notes. Remember where you were and note where you are now, your improvements, okay? Because you should be improved. If you're like, this is great, Tiffany, but I don't want to do this by myself. Doc, fix my gut, because that's a couple of my clients have come in the door saying that kind of thing to me. You are here able to take advantage of the early registration discounted price. The program actually opens for everyone August the 15th to 18th. That's when it opens and closes. We are in early registration right now. Early bird registration is today through the 13th. And if you use the code early, the whole program, including all of the lab testing, a custom 60-minute appointment with me, and your treatment plan plus 4 additional weeks of coaching is $14.95, which is a great deal because that's the kit and caboodle. The only thing you're going to need to take care of yourself is the supplements because everyone's supplementation is very different. If you miss this early bird registration, which will end in 3 days at 11:59, you have August 15th through the 18th, and that program is $200 more, and you'll just pay the regular price. The code won't work, and it's $16.95, and it's still a good deal. In comparison, I am not able to take private clients right now, but when I normally take a private client just to get in with me, you have to do 2 appointments, and those 2 appointments are $1,300. We don't even get to testing. We don't even get to testing because I do all these assessing, all this assessment stuff. The first 2 appointments are almost the price of this program. Then we have another appointment where we actually get to testing. You buy all of the labs and you do all that and you schedule an appointment. You would spend another $1,300 to $1,500 at that part of the process. This is a very good deal. To get to this point with me, normally as a one-on-one client, it's $3,000 because you're getting all this one-to-one interaction. To do this in the group, because you're sharing the expertise, you're saving, it's half the money. Okay, so it's a great savings. I have to also say, I have an insanely busy fall calendar and winter calendar. I will not be offering this program again or to the end of this year. I may offer it at the beginning of 2023. I'm not quite sure yet though because my calendar is very nutty. So I genuinely am not going to offer this again. This is the fall offering of this program, and then you'll see here, we're going to do our coaching September the 26th through October the 21st. So each week there'll be a coaching video for an hour where I'm answering questions. I'm teaching you something that I want you to know, that I want you to be doing. We're doing all of the, you purchase now, we send out the labs and get the appointment scheduled, get the labs interpreted, all that stuff. I can only take 10 people because this is quite work heavy for me, and then we do all the additional coaching later in September. Okay. If that is something you're interested in doing, please go to the website where you're at www.docbrownbush.com, fix my gut, and you can get signed up, and then we'll get you going and you'll receive your questionnaires, your stool test, and your food sensitivity test. We'll get those drop shipped to you. Um, okay. So it's docbrownbush.com. If you have questions, you can email Denise at frlwithtiffany.com. On Facebook, I'm Doc Brownbush, and Instagram, I'm Doc Brownbush as well. I think that is the right handle. And okay, so questions that have come in. Okay, it looks like I answered one of the questions with um, okay, with the information about what do you get and when. Another question that has come in is, how is this different from a regular stool test at your doctor's office? This stool test is very comprehensive. I've had stool tests myself from a MD. I'm an ND. I'm a naturopathic doctor or a doctor of natural medicine, and a medical doctor is going to run a different stool test. They look at inflammatory markers, and they look at the culture for certain infections, but that's it. When we do the stool test together, we're going to be looking at all kinds of things: organ function, good bacteria versus bad bacteria versus candida versus parasites and worm infections and all kinds of things. So it's a very comprehensive lab. It's very different. The foods that are tested was another question. I made sure to address that so you can see which foods we're testing. And the other question that I got that came in is, what do I get? And I just explained that as well. So I think we're good to go. And I'm maintaining schedule. I wanted to make sure this was 40 minutes or less. So thank you for participating. Thank you for dealing with my scratchy throat today, for jumping on and being able to watch live, or for watching the replay of this. Please do not wait. Go ahead and get registered early. We only have 10 spots. I will not take more than 10 people. I love a small, intimate group. And I'm Dr. Tiffany, and I look forward to helping you fix your gut. All right. Be well.